What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Dear White Teacher. I'm your host, Brandon R. Scarborough. Here tonight with my good friend, Willie Cook. I'm going to let him introduce himself, and we'll jump right into the conversation after he tells you about who he is. What's up, man?
What's going on, B?
Man, nothing much.
Doing
you
all
know?
right?
Yeah, man, I can't complain not one bit.
It's good.
Getting through this Ohio weather.
It looked like we at the end of
Yeah,
a season, hopefully.
yeah.
I think this might be fake spring.
Yeah, right.
The first fake spring. We got another spring coming. So.
Right. Man, get the people a snapshot of who you are, what you do.
Okay. So my name is Willie Cook. I'm currently the assistant principal at Copley High School. Prior to that, I worked as leader of campus support at ECOC in Akron, Ohio. And then prior to that, I worked at Kenton McKinley High School as dean of students. I found my way into education through a program called the Bright Fellowship at The Ohio State University. Prior to that, I had a career in construction, worked for Turner Construction and a couple other larger name construction companies after I graduated college with a degree in construction engineering technology.
So, man, I just learned about 5 different things about you that I ain't know till right now.
Yeah, I've had an interesting pathway to this seat today.
Cool. So a degree in construction, what's that?
So construction engineering technology is essentially like a technical degree. You can liken it to a mechanical engineer or a civil engineer.
Okay.
But it's got some elements of, a little bit of mechanical, a little bit of civil, a little bit of electrical engineering all into one. It's more like applied science rather than theoretical.
Okay. So then I'm going to take this somewhere, and I want to make sure I remember everything, So how did you end up out of construction and into education?
That's a good question.
All right.
That's a good question. So first of all, one of the reasons that I got into education, I'm going to kind of answer the question this way. Like many of our youth in high school, I thought my pathway was going to be on the football field. So I played football at Copley High School. Go Indians. We were,
1040.
Oh, no, go Indians. Because in 2001, y'all really wanted to play us, and we really wanted to see y'all.
This comes up every episode.
But here's the deal. No. So y'all were tough, but we were tough too. I mean, we was legit out there, right? We was putting some folks down on the field. Yeah. But, we were Final Four my senior year. The year before that, we were undefeated all the way up until the regional final, in which we played. Remember Justin Zwick was at Orville prior to going to Massillon, so we ran afoul of him. But that was my lane. I thought it was gonna be my lane, and I played guard, anything on the offensive line really. And so when I went to college, it didn't work out as well for me as I thought it was going to. That doesn't mean I was sorry. I was a beast on the field, but it just didn't work out.
Let me throw that in there real fast.
Let me
let you know.
I got to throw it in there.
Yeah.
We black men, we got to throw that in there.
I understand.
You know what I'm saying? But, it didn't work out for me as much as I thought it was going to. I actually worked third shift as a walk-on athlete. So I had a scholarship to Malone, left Malone, went to Akron U, was a preferred walk-on there, was working on earning a scholarship as a walk-on. And coaching staff then got fired. So it was a rough transition. But to feed myself during that time, I actually worked third shift at the post office. So there was a remote encoding center over there on Exeter Road where the old blimp hangar is, and I worked 11 to 7.
Wow.
And slept a couple hours in my car. Went to class, went to workouts, went to practice. And just did it all over again, trying to earn that. And, it never really panned out for me. So for a couple of years there, I was a little bit depressed about my path in life, and I was confused. I worked call centers, I worked warehouses, I did a lot of different things to try to get back. And I found my way back into education and earning my bachelor's. It was hard. It was difficult. A lot of other people have much tougher paths than I did, but that was my heart, and I've learned in my journey to not wish someone else's journeys and hardships because I have enough to satisfy my own situation. But I worked at a steel mill as an as a non-traditional student. I worked in other, warehouses and factories and things of that sort, trying to get there, third shift, getting off work and then going straight to calc class. I had to start all the way over.
Wow.
From literally this, you got to think this is like 8, 9 years after I graduated high school, basic math in college. And I worked my way all the way up to Calc 2. And I earned that degree. And then I went to work for one of the largest construction companies in the world as a project engineer and safety manager, and then also estimator at Turner Construction. So Hilton Cleveland downtown, that's right outside the Brown Stadium, the big glass building. I was on that project. I was on the $35 million project to beautify the Maltz Performing Arts Center for Case Western Reserve. A lot of other, big name projects that I worked on.
So you didn't get a degree until 8, 9 years after high school, and that was in construction.
Yeah.
So then fast forward, how did we get from construction to the Bright Fellowship?
So, and it's interesting that we're talking about the title of the podcast is Hello White Teacher.
Dear White Teacher.
Dear White Teacher, when I was experiencing some similar things that some people would say that, students would experience in predominantly white schools in corporate America.
Talk about it.
Oh, it was a lot, man. So I was there during his run for presidency.
Okay.
And so I would come to work and there would be Trump signs on my computer, on my computer screen, in the bathroom, in the stalls. Some of the guys and the laborers, from the different trades and things of that sort out in the on the job, saying kind of crazy stuff, things of that sort. Yeah, your guy's out of here soon. And it was a situation where I'm not supposed to hold that position. I'm not supposed to be wearing a white hat. I should be, my hands, I should have,
getting dirty.
some boots on, getting dirty, doing whatever, that kind of thing, which there's nothing wrong with that. Some of the most intelligent people I've ever met were people that I met when I worked at the steel mill.
Yeah.
They do things with, with tools and their understanding of science and mechanics that, I can only dream of. And I learned a lot there. But some of those guys kind of felt I shouldn't be holding that spot. And I experienced a lot of different things, all in all, the Turner experience was awesome, but there were some things that, left to be desired, and it wasn't clicking with me. It wasn't clicking with me. It wasn't part of who I was, and it wasn't personal. And so when I saw the Bright Fellowship marketing, I kind of looked at it and I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I got a background in coaching. I coached for St. V. I coached for Copley High School, freshman all the way up to varsity. And I've always been involved in mentoring of some kind. So I was a Choose Ohio first mentor. I was a College Now, a Greater Cleveland mentor. Now a Buckeye Scholars mentor for the Ohio State University. It's mostly virtual. And so I've always had these roles where I'm helping to pick someone else up because I understand where they are.
Yeah.
And that was the reason why I went in education. So I applied for the Bright Fellowship. I prepared myself, interviewed some folks, understood what it meant to be an administrator, and I went down and applied. It was intense. It was a 3-day application event. And so they interviewed 2,000 people. And over 2 cohorts, excuse me, and I was one of 60. And they just recently opened up applications for the next cohort at Ohio State. And so then from there, I was a administrative intern at Canton McKinley High School. And then after that administrative year, and I graduated with my MBA, which is what the program allows for. So it's an MBA with a focus in educational leadership.
Okay.
So it's a joint effort between the College of Human Ecology at The Ohio State University and the Fisher College of Business.
Gotcha.
And so we had some of the best and brightest professors there teaching us how to lead. And it wasn't just for any school, it was for high need schools. And the premise is they pay for the degree, which is a $150,000 MBA. All books and everything included. So it was a concierge program and it was an accelerated but you needed to work in a urban environment, high need school for at least 3 years.
Okay.
And so I worked at McKinley High School, was dean of students there. The year after I graduated, they were going through some things financially with the change of leadership in that district. And then I was over at Akron Public at ECOC as leader campus support, which is a pseudo administrative position. And then I was ready to move up into that assistant principal role to kind of sort of progress. And there was an opportunity at home, and you know, they kind of called and said, hey, you know, we had a role here. What do you think? And I applied, and that's kind of how it happened.
So were you still doing construction while you were in the Bright Fellowship?
For the first year, you know, like couple 6 months, 7 months of the program, where I was basically going down, you know, like once a week or once a month for like a couple days, like on a weekend. Yeah, I was. But then summer of 2017, I believe, I cut myself out of my employment with Turner Construction and went down to Ohio State fully. And then I started to be enrolled and immersed in education at McKinley High School.
What was when you saw the Bright Fellowship opportunity coming, like what was the feeling like, I need to do this? Like what was the calling or the push to, I mean, that's a heck of a career jump, you know. What was the motivation for that? The
motivation is always going to be for me to help make someone else's path to education easier than mine was.
That's dope.
Because I literally bled to get that undergraduate degree. And like I said, I'm not saying that I had the most difficult path. I was a part of a great program at the University of Akron called the Choose Ohio First program. Shout out to Adam Smith, who was the original founding director of their program. And as I said, where I met my wife too, because she was in that program as well.
All right. Everything happens for a reason.
Everything happens for a reason. But, you know, I would not be here, I would not be who I am without that program, without Adam Smith. And he did for me what I'm trying to do for other kids. And so as a result, every place that I go, I'm always on the hunt trying to get another kid an opportunity at a merit-based scholarship, another opportunity to lift themselves out of where they are to better themselves. So at East, at McKinley, and then now at Copley, I've always built a bridge for kids to get into this program because it's such an amazing program. And the people that run it are awesome. My wife is she worked for the program now, actually.
Oh, really?
So, you know, I got some guys that are in the program now from McKinley that are still in it and that are getting ready to graduate.
Sweet.
And I just talked to one of them the other day, and he texted me, and I don't talk to him as much as I'd like to, but he said, listen, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And, you know, I told him, I said, you're the sum of the choices that you made. He made great choices in high school. He was a 3.8 student at McKinley High School. He's a football player, he's an athlete. And, you know, he was going to take communications, which is nothing wrong with communications. There's nothing wrong.
I was about to say, man, my first degree in communications.
There's nothing wrong with it, but I'm like,
I don't know why I got it, but
no,
I got it.
I told him, I said, okay, tell me what you're going to do with communications.
Yeah.
We had that conversation.
Yeah.
You're going to work in radio, you're going to work in TV, you're going to work in broadcasting. What are you going to do? And I said, or I could put you on a different path. It's going to be a little tougher. It's going to be a little harder. But it's definitely going to be worth it because there's not a lot of people that look like you in that field, and that was engineering. So he's studying electrical engineering right now. He's going to graduate this semester. It's exposed me to a lot of different people and a lot of great opportunities.
I wish somebody would have had that conversation with me because I didn't want to go to college. But my parents were like, you get a job or you go to college.
Yeah.
And so I literally, when it was time for me to pick my major, I said, I'm going to open this book up because this is 1998. You know, we not online like we are now and none of that. So I had the real book in my hand, and I said, wherever this book opens up, when I open it, that's going to be my major. So I got a degree in mass media communications. It was cool, but I guess I'm using it right now. We communicating.
You have to know exactly what you want to do with any degree that you pursue.
Yeah, and that's hard. And it's a whole nother conversation. That's hard to do at 18 years old.
Yes, and that's the huge thing. So a lot of kids that I talk to now, and I'm like, hey, you might change your mind.
You're going.
I changed my major 3 times.
Yeah, yeah.
It's going to happen, and I think one of the things we got to fix about our society is we expect 18-year-old kids to know exactly what they're going to do with the rest of their life.
It's impossible, man.
They don't know what they're going to do tomorrow night.
At all.
So
I was in my 30s not knowing what I'm going to do tomorrow.
Me too.
So,
Me too.
That whole premise of you grown at 18, man. That's especially in our community, man. That's it drives me nuts.
It's something that we really need to fix and think about.
Yeah. So you graduated from Copley High. Now you're back at Copley High. So let's talk about your position there, and then describe for the people that. So it's easier for us to talk because we from Akron.
Right.
And the expectation is for people that are in California to hear this and listen to this and see this. Copley is you want to call it a suburb of Akron?
It's a suburban school. It's
Okay.
a suburb. It's a decently affluent area, majority white, but it is one of the most diverse schools in this area.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't realize what I mean when I say diversity. People usually think when I say diversity, I mean there's white kids and black kids. No. There are Nepali kids. There are Japanese, Korean, Hmong, Lao. What else? There's Indians, Native Americans. There are Spaniards, folks from Chile, folks from Brazil.
Wow.
Every part of the globe, Africans, Nigerians, folks from Ghana, folks from Botswana. It really is. And, I was asked this question at the interview when they asked me, why do I want to come back here? And I said, because if I was to put the model UN in the school, it would be Copley High School.
Yeah.
And there's just everybody there from every walk of life, every socioeconomic status, every background you could think of, you have it there. And it's really a beautiful place. High performing school, excellent academic standards, great, athletics. The community really supports their kids. And, it's where it's home for me. That's where I went to high school. And that was really the reason why I think it sticks with me more heavily than anything else is because people don't notice I moved around a lot when I was, younger. My mom was a single mother until I was 13 years old. Leaving a rough situation, with my biological father, 2 years old, we moved all across the Midwest. So I was originally born in Gary, Indiana. We got folks in Chicago, and that's where most of my family base is. Erie, PA, Chicago, Gary, Akron, Columbus, DC, Alexandria. We moved. She worked for the Postal Service, and it was just me and her. And she just kept getting promotions and just kept saying, hey, you want to go on another adventure? And I was like, sure, let's do it. And we just traveled and just did different things and went different places. And sometimes it was for a year, sometimes it was for 2. But we stayed here when I got into high school. And that's probably why I feel the way I do about that school. And I just had an amazing experience there.
Yeah. So, say your position again?
Assistant principal.
Okay. So, you are the first black man to hold that position?
If not the first, probably maybe the second, but I believe the first in that position, yes.
Yeah. Well, so even if not the first, to be in that position in 2022,
it's rare.
Very rare in that area, in that community. So to get that position, what was your initial goals to be in that building, knowing some of the things we know, like it's affluent, it's majority Caucasian, it's as diverse as you just described. What are some of your, so let's go, before we get to the goals, what's some of your responsibilities in that?
First of all, I actually said this to the superintendent of the district currently. We were having a conversation about it was a racially charged issue. It was earlier in this year, and I won't expose too much about that situation, but the district handled it right. And I said, me being in this role, I realized that I'm in this seat for this reason right now. And I said, the shoes are almost unfillable. And basically, I am the shoes. You know, anytime any black man or any black woman goes into a position, even if that's not on their mind, the goal is to make sure that there can be another one after me in that position.
That's big.
But, you know, I just want to give the kids at that school, regardless of who they are, the same experience that I had as much as possible. So I want this to be a place to where they can come to school to learn. They love coming to school. They want to enjoy coming to school. They buy into the culture. They buy into, you know, what we believe Copley is and what Copley has been and what Copley can be. And I believe that, you know, we're beginning, I'm doing that. I believe that I'm, you know, talking to a lot of kids and trying to understand a lot of kids. And today I had a conversation with a young man who, you know, he's in his fourth school in his junior year.
Wow.
So from freshman year to junior year, he's been in 4 different schools. And I'm like, you know, trying to figure him out, and he's just very apathetic academically. And we had a conversation with mom today with him and a couple of his teachers. And, you know, everybody's talking about his grades, and I'm like, well, let's slow it down for a second. Let's talk about him. I'm not gonna say his name.
Yeah.
Let's talk about him. You know, we can't get to the grades until we know that the needs are met. You know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, you got to feel safe, you got to feel fed, you got to feel rested, and you know, all those needs met. And you know, so we went down the list, and I just started asking him, hey, do you feel safe in your environment? Yes. Do you feel like you have food? Yes. Do you have a roof over your head? Yes. And so we started to drill down and figured out what the problem was. And you know, and the young man is, you know, African American, and it's my job to be able to help have those conversations, because I want to say all white folks, but some don't understand how to have the conversation with black kids. They don't understand what we deal with. We don't understand what could be ailing us. You know, I heard a great comedian, and this comedian actually is a person that I know from working in one of the previous schools. I won't divulge, but she said something the other night. I was at a comedy show, and we were the funny stop.
Okay.
And she said, you know, we're all the same. And she ended her show with this. She said, we're all the same. You know, black women and, you know, white women and black boys and or black men and white men, you know, we're the same. We just cry different. So, you know, not saying that, you know, a certain race cries in a certain way.
Right.
But, you know, white folks, you see them, you know, you see white folks, they cry, you know, they're real tears, and, you know, they're emotional and that kind of thing. But, you know, and you know, sometimes white men do too. I'm not saying that they don't respond another way, but, you know, largely black boys cry different. We cuss, we yell, we scream, we ready to fight.
We taught not to cry.
We're taught not to cry. I was taught that too growing up. You know, you got to be a man. You got to man up. And I had to say to some teachers, I'm like, you see that, you know, you see this aggression, and you see him being upset. You see him being apathetic, and you see him, you know, wanting to fight people, and you see him upset with you and upset at the situation. But you know, he's really not being aggressive. He's crying. We just cry different than what you've seen. And I think that clicked in their mind and say, oh, okay. Wow, I never even considered that. And it's those conversations that I need to be there for.
Yeah. So the title of this is Dear White Teacher. It's catchy, and I hope it doesn't scare people off. I hope it scares people enough to listen. Yeah. But it's to have these kind of conversations because white teachers are the majority across the nation in any school, but even in urban schools. And so my thought is, if I'm going to help black kids, I can also help white teachers help black kids, and then everybody wins.
Right.
And so that's kind of the motivation for doing this show. So in like this conversation you had with this young man, are you the only black administrator in the school, in the high school?
Yes.
So what do you think, what would this intervention maybe look like if you had not been there? Because I'm getting to like like you were talking about understanding. We cry different because we got different things going on. Everybody got something going on.
Right.
Let's be clear.
Yep.
But we have different things going on that everybody doesn't know to understand.
I'm gonna take you back a little bit into my experience at that high school.
Okay.
To answer that question, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
So I was mostly, for the most part, a pretty good, student going or good kid. I wasn't a great student.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, football was a priority, right?
Okay.
So I'm just gonna keep it real.
Yeah.
That was the priority. So the only times I really got into trouble was when I would get into it with people, and usually 90% of the time it was because there was a racial comment made to me. So I'm not going to say that Copley doesn't have situations like that. They've always had, that kind of situation. And I don't think that's unique to Copley. I think that's something that happens in any school that has any kind of diversity. Anytime you get people from different backgrounds and different ethnicities in one place, you're going to have a little bit of friction.
Yes.
And so I got into a situation where I got in a fight at school, and I cracked this boy in the head because of something he said to me. It was racially charged. And they suspended me, rightly so. And this is one of the cool parts about Copley, and it's kind of sort of, it's in support of the title of the podcast, but I think, the goal might be to elicit some tooling up and some training for white administrators and white educators. But I had a great experience with my principal at that time. His name was Mr. Steffen. Shout out to Mr. Steffen. He was awesome. I was explaining this to him, and he was talking to my mom, and he's like, she told him, she's like, you have no understand what he's dealing with as a black boy growing up in this neighborhood and in this country. And so the greatest of Mr. Steffen was, he went and sought out a man that you might know, Luke Marchman. He was a police officer.
I heard the name. I don't know him.
Great dude, great dude. He actually started the diversion program at Copley, for Copley PD, and also I think Akron PD adopted it to help kids avoid the system.
Okay.
But he reached out to Luke Marchman, and Luke was he was our dare officer. He was that cool guy, and he was always at the school. He was always at our games. We graduated. We'd see him. He knew our names. You know, he came up, gave us a hug. And he really broke it down for Mr. Steffen. And I really appreciated Mr. Steffen for reaching out to understand something that he didn't know instead of just brushing it away. Because a lot of times I feel like that happens. Yeah. Now, with the person that this young man was working with, I don't believe that would have happened. But I believe that young man might not have opened up the way he did today. Yeah. Had someone that looked like him not been in the room. And, we talked, and, we still talked, and, he came to see me at the end of the day, and, I always have snacks and treats for kids because I
saw the sign.
You saw that sign?
I saw the sign.
And I swear the only reason the kids come to my office is because they want snacks and treats and stuff, and I keep oodles and noodles in the office. Sam's Club, you know what I mean? And chips and whatever, anything the kid wants, so that whether they just need something, they're not eating at home, they need a little more. Or they don't like lunch, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. In most cases, if you're doing right in school, I got something for you. You know what I mean? And I just do that to make sure that they know that it's not just fire and brimstone with me. It's not just Mrs. Cook about to come down and lay the law down because you was in skipping class. I care about you as a person. So I keep the little miniature deodorants and stuff and that kind of things, and toiletries in there too, just in case. Dope. Yeah. Just in case, you know what I mean?
Because you never know.
You don't. Yeah. You really don't.
So being this year number one, so how have you found yourself navigating? Let me ask this. Have you had instances where teachers have come to you, or even other administrators, to ask for advice or counsel on how to navigate situations with our kids?
Yes. And, I commend them.
Yeah.
Because to me, that shows growth or the potential for growth. That means that you understand and you see that there's something that they could be missing. They realize that hey, I might be missing something.
Might be a disconnect.
Let me help to figure this out. And so, band director Copley came and he was trying to get me to help him, and we had a conversation about it, and I think he's in a good place now to help some of the parents understand what the band program is at Copley. It's a bad program. Okay. Copley's band program is awesome. Okay. One of my favorite teachers, a couple of my favorite teachers actually were in the band program, and it's they compete at the highest level that there is. They take a trip every 2 years to either Cali or to Florida. Okay. A couple times New York. And they train with other colleges and big time marching band directors. It is the program of programs in this area. Wow. It is incredible. And so he was like, I don't think we're communicating the right way of what the time commitment is being in our band. And he said, and I want to be fair, and I want to make sure that we're communicating this, and I want to make sure that we're supporting all of our students, not just the legacies. Not just the ones who understand what this means, those who may not understand what it means, but when they do understand what it means, they'll buy into it more. And we had a long conversation, and we talked about it, and I told them, a couple of things, and we communicated, and I think they're in a good place, but I really commend them about that. On the flip side, you do get those calls sometimes. When you got that black mama on the phone and she about ready to, she getting in somebody's ear right now.
She taking them there.
And then, Mr. Cook, yeah, okay, I'll take it. No problem. Or when they show up to school. Yeah. And they're like, I don't know what's going on over there. She's upset and they can't figure it out. And I'm like, okay, well, hey, let's just have that conversation and figure out what's going on. So you get that too. And I think it really just, it's just the same situation. We just communicate in different ways. Folks from different backgrounds. The communication isn't always the same. They might not speak the King's English, but don't think for a second that that mama that comes through. Yeah. Just because she might not be using the King's English doesn't know what she's talking about. She knows exactly what she's talking about. She knows exactly what she's talking about, and she knows what she needs to get done. Right. And I try to ease that, build that bridge, smooth that bridge over, and make it the conversation as productive as possible.
So talk about your experiences, and correct me if I'm wrong. Both McKinley and East would be considered a little bit far more urban than Copley. So touch on your experiences there, and even from a perspective of building relationships between teachers, students of different backgrounds, what that looked like in those positions.
So the first thing that I want to communicate is the students at McKinley High School or East are just as awesome and just as great as the kids at Copley. And that goes for any other school. Yeah. They're talented, they're passionate, they're incredible athletes, they're incredible students. They've got lots of talent.
I'm gonna stop you there real quick. I appreciate your perspective, regardless of where you are, that first, these students are people. And regardless of backgrounds, challenges, whatever, they're all great people.
All of them.
And I think we need more teachers to have that perspective, because a lot of what we hear and see is he's a bad kid. He's really a great person. He just has some challenges. He might be bad for real. We know bad kids. We know a lot of bad kids. He might be. But they're still great people, and I think that's dope of you.
No, I really enjoyed, McKinley, it's a different feel. It's a different vibe. There's no question about it. The kids at East and, especially in our JROTC program over at East. Shout out to the JROTC program over at East, Top Mac, who's the sergeant over their program. They got one of the top programs in the state or in the country. 10%, top 10%.
Wow.
They have an entire military competition at East every year, and East dusts every school that comes through there,
Wow.
including the private ones. You know what I mean? You know, the kids, they are just as capable. They just live in a different zip code. Your zip code should not determine the quality of education that you get.
That's what I was kind of thinking this thought out as you were talking.
Yeah.
And I kind of know the answer. People even watching this will know the answer, but why do we not hear about, I never knew that about East, about the ROTC. Why don't we hear about, so watch this. I think I'm allowed to say this. You know what happened with East last night?
Yeah.
Good, okay, cool. So that literally made the news. So what happened with East last night? Basketball game, kids got in a fight. It was on the news almost immediately. Albeit it is news.
Minutes.
Man,
Minutes after.
lightning fast.
They posted the video today.
They posted a video last night.
Wow. It was on the news.
Yeah.
You know, there's a couple answers to this question.
Shoot them all.
One answer is and you know, I gotta say it because when we talk about politics, you talk about the left and the right, right? The right always uses this excuse of what's being shown in the media as, well, that's just the media, you know, taking something and sensationalizing it, you know, making it, you know, front page news, and you know they sensationalize it, and you know it's what they want because it's juicier than anything else.
Yeah.
That's partly true. We got to be honest and call a spade a spade.
Right.
That's partly true. The other side of it is, I think other school districts might be a little bit better at accentuating the positives. You know, they hush down the stuff that kind of goes down that they don't want everybody to know about it. Like, oh, but hey, look at this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I wish more people would do that. You know, I always made it a point to, you know, on my social media page to put out there what my kids are doing at school. And I call them all my kids. Some of them get on my nerves.
Right.
But, you know, point out what my kids are doing, you know. East has an entire auto shop, Firestone Auto Shop in that building.
Yeah.
You could get an oil change, transmission flush, new brakes, tire rotation. They might have an alignment machine in there, and they do a great job in there. You know, they have a bank, actually like a school bank that runs in the bank.
I just heard about the bank.
You know, they got a lot of things going on there. McKinley, listen, their broadcasting program is awesome. Their band is pretty good there too.
Yeah.
Their choir is good.
Yeah.
They got one of the baddest speech and debate teams in the state. Every year they send kids to state at McKinley. You know, and I think people just get caught up in certain narratives and they don't really see the positives. Both of those schools have a lot of positives.
Yeah.
Let alone, I mean, you know, the East has the baddest football team in the area. You know, shout out to, you know, Marcus Hayes and, you know, Gabe Gonzalez. I played ball with them in college.
I know Gabe.
I mean, they got a cold team, and you know they got a lot of very talented, you know, teachers, you know, there and the kids there. One thing that I communicated, and I actually taught a beginning of school year lesson on this, and we're talking about restorative practices. You familiar?
I've heard the word.
Yeah. So restorative practices is basically a way to restore a relationship in a group or organization, sometimes between people. And in the education world, some teachers kind of sort of feel like it's like a way to go around or move around discipline. And a lot of teachers get hung up on discipline. And I actually had this conversation today, and I'm really struggling with that thought today. And so we're talking about restorative practices and restoring relationships. And one of the slides that I had on there was Killmonger from Black Panther. And, he's just standing there, and he's in front of the sacred garden in Wakanda after he, threw T'Challa off, the waterfall, and the whole garden is burning. It's that scene. And you just see him standing there. And it's just like a really iconic image in a way. And the caption that I put underneath it was an African proverb. And it said that the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it to feel its warmth.
Wow.
And you can't tell me that's not literally what that picture is. And so what I was communicating to the teachers, and a lot of teachers in that room were white, I'm like, listen, we have to bring those kids in, the ones that push and fight and are always angry. That is a symptom of a larger issue. You got to get to the larger issue. You can't get to the larger issue unless you know those kids. It's harder to do in some ways. And I really feel like a lot of times as an educator, and I thought it would be a little bit easier at a Copley, but it's not. There's so much that goes on in the school, so much that's not about teaching and learning, and not about the kids that happens that we have to deal with, that I wonder if I get to do that enough. And that's the challenge of being an educator.
So how do you do that when you got 20 kids in a classroom?
You just got a lot of incoming, man. It's just, and they got it, the teachers got it, the administrators definitely have it, district office has it.
Yeah.
It's tough. It just takes time. I do it in the way of having things in my office the kid's going to want to come and get.
Right.
And then I can get a couple seconds with them. Hey, you good? How are things at home? How's your mom doing if I know the parents? Your brother doing all right? What do you got going on this weekend?
Yeah.
You've been coming to see me a couple times, recently. Are you okay? Everything all right? You eating enough? You still working? You still doing whatever? I go to the sports events. I quote unquote have to, but I want to. I got kids that are boxing, and then they're boxing in a couple weeks. I'm gonna go up to see him box. I just try to be where they are whenever I can, even if it's just at lunch.
Yeah.
Just to see, just be around them.
Yeah.
Just start sparking up a conversation. I just do goofy stuff like, kids playing Uno in the lunchroom. I'll walk up behind one of them and look and see how many cards. I'm like, she got 2 blues, 2 greens, and a yellow. And, the kid get upset, but it's
Building relationships.
It opens
Yeah.
vacuum for conversation.
Yeah.
And I really push teachers to try to do that a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's
so important, especially for our kids. Building relationships is key. One of the things I say is kids don't learn from people they can't trust.
Right.
And so I think what you're doing is phenomenal, even if something as small as Reese cups and oodles and noodles. You know what I'm saying? That they feel safe with you. How do you get teachers to understand relationships are key, that are so focused on, like I think you said it a minute ago, whatever the number is, percentage of teaching has nothing to do with teaching. It's relationships, it's safety, it's I value you as a person, not just you getting an A, B, or C on this test.
It's difficult. It's hard. One of the biggest tasks and the hardest tasks to get, because some school districts there's like a duty period. And the teachers have certain duties, and nobody wants lunch duty, right? Nobody wants lunch duty. And I understand in some schools, I'm like, man, oh my God, man. In certain places, I'm like, oh my God, I can't.
Yeah.
It's lunch 7 again, man. Okay. But, it's tough, but that is prime relationship building time.
Yeah.
And so when we get pushback on that, I communicate, this is a great opportunity for you to get to know your kids and get to know other kids. And that's usually the argument. Well, I don't have any of these kids, so what am I going to do? Talk to them.
Yeah.
Go talk to them. Go talk to a kid you don't know every day for a month and tell me you don't feel better about coming to school here, coming to work here. Just go talk to them. Some kids are going to be like, looking at you like you're weird, like, what do you want? You know, you feel the vibe and you're like, okay, well, all right. You move on to the next one. You know, you spark up conversations, do whatever. You know, they're watching, watch stuff on their phones, and, you start conversations that way, and all of it's important because you want to build the relationship before you need it.
Ooh.
You don't want to try to build the relationship when something's happening.
Yeah.
When there's a crisis, you want to build it before you need it.
That's good.
So those kids, there's kids I don't even know that, I'll just be out. Hey, Mr. Cook, I'm like, hey, what's going on? I don't even know who that kid is.
Yeah.
But they know me.
Yeah. Because Copley's small, so
it's actually not that small. It's about 900 kids.
Well, no, not the school population. I'm saying
like
I know where you stay.
Yeah.
Then in relation to the grocery store and to Montrose Fairline,
right,
all that kind of stuff, you're gonna bump into everybody.
Yeah, and it's like those relationships are important, and it doesn't take a whole lot to develop it.
Yeah.
Just small things. It's like losing weight, or it's like how you eat an elephant. One bite at a time. How do you chop down a tree?
Yeah.
It's one swing at a time, bro.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna take a minute, but it eventually will bear fruit.
Mm-hmm.
So I just try to encourage them. I'm like, so what if you don't know them? Go get to know them.
Yeah.
And I think some of the teachers have kind of sort of bought into that, and I'll bring kids around those teachers and be like, come here, let's go mess with Miss So and So.
Yeah, yeah.
And they'll look at me like, and I'm like, just talk to them.
Yeah.
And,
opportunity.
Eventually what I started to see happening is, teachers standing on the outside of the lunchroom while kids are doing things, they're starting to migrate inside, and kids are starting to, hey, so and so.
Yeah.
X, Y, Z, and it makes that environment fun. It makes them want to come there.
Yeah.
That's the goal. That's the key. People think it's like, the discipline and the high standards. High standards is great. All that stuff's great. But if the kids don't want to be there, that's when we got a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, you doing awesome work, man. You're doing awesome work. And so, man, we always in, man. This has been a great conversation, man. So I appreciate you coming on. I learned a lot just sitting here that I didn't know, from the construction to your journey and all that stuff, and all of those kind of things, to just how you think and how passionate you are about relationships. And that's one of the themes that, and every episode so far, relationships have been the key to successful learning, successful teaching, and all that kind of thing, man. So I thank you for coming on. We always end with, for sure, man, man, look at the camera, leave us with one thing that you think, might be helpful to a teacher, administrator, that they can take with them, and, whether it's a piece of advice, wisdom, counsel, strategy, whatever, you want to do. And then tell the people where they can find you on social media, if you want all that, and where they can,
Absolutely. So, really quick, I'm not going to take too much time. Quick story. Football team at Copley High School when I was a junior. We had a guy come in from New York, and he moved to Copley. He's from Manhattan. And this is a case in point of how white teachers are able to impact students of other races. And so Kenny was black, all of our coaches were white. And it was he came like in the middle of the season. And so he walked into school, and this is back in the 90s, right? So Tim's were wet and laced up, baggy jeans, you know what I'm saying? He was a New York cat, and he walking through, and he kind of just, he had like a little rhythm about him. He's walking and stuff, and they held a impromptu tryout because they was looking at him. They're like, hey, we need that kid. Yeah. He's 6'5", 2-something, 250, 260, big dude. And so he decides to try out, and he came, try out the first day. He had his Timbs on. He didn't have those sneakers or nothing, and no cleats. And he would never say anything. He never spoke, never talked a whole lot. And so they kept working on him, and talking to him, and inviting him over, to their rooms for lunch. and, picking them up for practice and taking them home for practice. And then after games, just, taking them out, to get something to eat or whatever. And he would sit alone or stand alone at practices or, at team events and things of that sort. And we would just keep pulling him in. And the coaches would keep pulling him in and pulling him in. And the dude that wouldn't talk became an integral part of this team. And Kenny had always lived in, went to urban schools. And these white men, big shout out to Coach, Dan Borman, Rob Brown, Coach Schmelzer over at Copley, Ed Robinson, may he rest in peace, Coach Kuthin, all these guys, they just kept loving on them. And we had what's called a senior's last hit. And the last hit is basically you hit a bag and you say a couple things about yourself, and, it's kind of sort of like a send-off for seniors. And remember what I said about we cry different. I've never seen Kenny so emotional. But it was just all this love pouring out of him that he was receiving from these white men who didn't know him, had no reason to support him in the way that they did. And to this day, when I talk to him or when I see him, he always talks about that experience. And so my message is, regardless of where a kid may come from, you can still impact them. It just takes a relationship. It just takes relationship building. It just takes a little bit of time. It's like, in Shawshank Redemption, it just said time and pressure. That's how you tear down a wall. Just time and pressure. But you can find me at Willie Cook 246 at msn.com. That's WILLIE COOK 246 at msn.com. That's my direct email. Copley High School, you can look on the website and find me there. Thank you for having me.
Nah, man, thank you for coming, man.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. All right, another episode of Dear White Teacher. See you next time. Brandon R. Scarborough. Peace.